Want to join Castillon Confidential but not sure how? We'll explain. Let's go. You go to Google, search for Castillon Confidential, click on join, and a screen will appear that says join this channel. Click it and you'll automatically have three options. Number 1, survival. Number 2, loyalty. Number 3, freedom. And you join the one you want the most. It's that easy and that simple to become a member of Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Welcome, awakened people. Thank you for being there. A huge hug to all of you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. But only free people, open minds, awakened people, or those who want to wake up from that kind of lethargy that comes from public money, the handout, the little help, being dirt poor all your life, but getting by with just a little bit. That way of living is what some want us to get used to, cutting off opportunities for us, our children, and future grandchildren. Here we're going to try to break away from that. We've been in the trenches for over 4 years with almost 200,000 followers and many more that I hope will keep joining. Every day there are new people being heard. This isn't meant to be a tsunami. We've never wanted to be a passing fad. No. This is something else. You come here to think. If you're looking for entertainment, I'm sorry. There are other wonderful channels on YouTube. Here we provide confidential, verified information. We try to get it right. We can make mistakes and we even know how to apologize. It's rare, isn't it? I know you are like us, regular people. And that's why I admire you so much and appreciate the effort you're making to share this channel, to pass it on to friends, to help us. The help isn't always financial. Sometimes sending this through WhatsApp channels where there are a lot of people does much more. Thank you very much. Well, I have to tell you something, and it has to do with Manu, who was telling us about this. A listener asked us for this the other day.
I'm a follower of your show. I love it. And I know that nothing happens by chance on your show. You have everything very well planned. So I'm going to ask you, what's going on with Venezuela? It's been months since anyone has said anything about Venezuela. What's happening? What do you think is going on? Why isn't anyone talking about it? Is something being prepared?
Thank you, Manu. You are so smart and you have such a good head on your shoulders. Well, today we're going to talk about Venezuela. First of all, let me tell you that even though I wish it were true, it isn't. That the United States, the American Prosecutor's Office, has seized a property belonging to Pedro Sanchez in Florida, a mansion worth I don't know how many millions. I wish, well, not that I wish Sanchez had a mansion because he does, but not in Florida. No, I wish they had seized it wherever it is. Someday we'll find out where the money is, where the properties are, and what other countries do to get to the bottom of it. But until that day comes, look, we told you about 2 exclusives a few months ago about Venezuela. The thing is, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, have negotiated Maduro's future. And it involves him leaving. And because he will leave in the coming months. You already know how the agreement is. There are previous shows with hundreds of thousands of views that explain it. But those steps are moving very quickly, faster than we expected. Venezuela, it's true, has the largest oil reserves in the world, but Maduro has decided to cut off their funding. And the best way to do it is that way. He has already done it with Chevron, the American oil company that used to give Maduro between $6 and $10 million every month, financing the regime like no one else. Chevron generates, or rather used to generate, 1 out of every 3 of the regime's revenues. By shutting off the tap to Chevron, in fact, it gets shut off in April, Maduro's government will stop receiving $3 billion. And I assure you that does a lot of damage to the regime. a great deal. To the point that last weekend, during his usual Women's Day rally, Maduro himself mentioned it.
There, imperialism made some decisions and shot themselves in the foot because they sanctioned an American company, Chevron, which has been working here for 100 years. If it were up to us, in fact, let me be even clearer, if it were up to me as president, if it were up to the political and military high command of the Bolivarian Revolution, if it were up to our people, that company, Chevron, would keep operating in Venezuela for another 100 years.
Of course, and that way it would keep pouring millions into your pockets and those of your people, right? A form of corruption used by all the big companies that operate in Venezuela. Look, Maduro has been hit hard and almost sunk by the shutdown of Chevron, which, as I said, will happen at the beginning of April. And he has asked China for help. But China has said no. They have cut off any further lending to him. In the last 10 years, they have lent him about $62 billion. He still hasn't paid them back. He still owes more than 11 billion and isn't paying. Maduro is a deadbeat. Maduro, in the 2000s, his oil facilities produced 3 million barrels a year. Now it doesn't even reach 1 million. And it's not that there's no oil, it's just a disaster of coordination, organization, and corruption. The money disappears in 1,001 ways. Look, it got to the point where, remember, Trump told him, we have to repatriate illegal Venezuelans from the United States. Send me planes. He sent a couple or three, and now he can't send more because he doesn't have money to charter those planes. That's what I'm telling you. Yes, it's true. Millions, billions in Istanbul, in gold bars, in banks, in Moscow. But in Venezuela, for day-to-day life, the ways of getting financing are becoming more and more limited. It's the beginning of the end for the dictator, strangling him economically. Xi Jinping wants things from Venezuela, but not just its oil, or at least not mainly its oil. He wants the rare earths. He wants to maintain control over its gold mines. That's why the negotiation with Donald Trump as an intermediary between Xi Jinping and the Venezuelan opposition, who are the ones who won the elections. China's negotiation through third parties is taking place directly with Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado. They are preparing the transfer of power. If they accept the agreements that China had with the United States, if they pay the debt, China wants to collect from them, no matter which government is in power, the 11 billion. If they maintain agreements on rare earths, on gold mines, and keep selling oil to China, Maria Corina and Edmundo Gonzalez will come to power in a few months. If Donald Trump gives his approval to this agreement, it's curious because that's happening in the United States, where they're about to deliver the final blow to this dictator, while Spain is doing exactly the opposite. Look, the elections were in July, remember? The ones with Maduro's rigged results. All right. In April, Repsol, one of the largest oil companies, the biggest in Spain, made a deal with the dictator 3 months earlier and increased the production and purchase of oil from Venezuela. Repsol acquired 40% of the oil fields in La Ceiba and Tomopora, an operation that cost Repsol 1,600,000,000 euros, which Repsol paid to Maduro. Who is the CEO of Repsol? Yosu Johnny Mas. I'm sure you remember him, a chemist, a man, former president of the PNV with Arsalus. They say he's an intelligent man. In business, it doesn't matter if the person you're negotiating with kills, murders, tortures, or stages a coup against democracy. The point is to get paid, right? To make money. And that has made Spain one of their main clients to this day. More than 3 million tons of the dictator's oil arrive at Spanish ports and end up in your cars, the ones you're driving right now while you're listening to me. the largest amount in 20 years. There has never been any campaign by the government, the opposition, or their partners asking Repsol to leave Venezuela because it's a country that kills its own citizens. Or that Telefonica, which is also tied to the Sanchez government, should stop being so involved. It's one of the most thriving multinationals that the dictator relies on to lead, organize, control, and monitor his own people and his opponents. Yes, yes. Telefonica, Repsol, and so many other companies that only care about their profits, not about dignity, not about honor. Look, Spain's dignity can be restored in many ways. Of course, none of them involve financing Chavista dictatorships like Maduro's. And we have Spanish companies that do it. And about that in Spain, not a word. Nobody talks about Gaza every day anymore. They don't know how close we are to Hamas and the Palestinians and how far from the Venezuelans. Friends, as I said, the negotiation is going smoothly. Trump is keeping his word. China is with Trump on this. Despite the differences in tariffs and any background noise, Maduro has only a few days, a few months left. If everything goes the way it seems to be going, China and the United States will bring down the dictator without bloodshed, which is what China has asked for, as we already said, peacefully. And he goes into a golden exile to enjoy everything he has stolen from his citizens for decades. Welcome. There is more confidential information. Let's begin. Gentlemen, sometimes magical moments just happen without any planning. In public appearances, in congressional or Senate committee meetings. This happened last week when Inmaculada Lopez, a mother of 4 children and grandmother of 7 grandchildren, went to speak before Congress. This statement, a summary which you will see now, has gone viral all over social media.
I'm not suffering abuse from my husband. I'm suffering abuse from my ex-daughter-in-law, who turned me away when I went to try to see my grandchildren at school. My son discovered her infidelity in his own house. She decided to act out of spite, separating my grandchildren from their entire paternal environment. This is the selfish and harmful strategy that feminists are using nowadays. What they're doing is taking public resources from all our taxes for the false victims. For the real victims, they don't help at all, because I know many cases and they're having a really hard time. And we still can't see my grandchildren. I can't give them the hugs or kisses I'd like, so I give them to others. I also can't give them their birthday or Christmas presents.
Inmaculada wasn't saying anything that doesn't happen to many men and women, grandmothers, grandfathers in this country. Not being able to see her grandchildren as part of the revenge, in this case from a daughter-in-law, turns this woman into an abused woman. But she herself admitted that she called 016 the hotline for abused women. But of course, if the abused woman is abused by another woman, it doesn't count. They won't help you then. Those inconsistencies, that absurdity in our law that distinguishes between man or woman depending on who the aggressor is, that's what this woman exposed to the congressmen and congresswomen. I want to greet her, and I'm very grateful that she agreed to talk with me. Inmaculada, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, I'm very well.
She just said hello. Did you feel comfortable in Congress?
Honestly, yes, but I also felt a little disappointed because I expected that since more political parties were invited, there would be more representation of what politics is like in Spain today. But it really seems like the rest of the political parties don't care at all. I mean, I have to thank Rocio Media, Rocio Aguirre for being there and for inviting us. But on the other hand, I would have liked to have debated with the other politicians too about something.
Hey, tell me how that day was when you called 016. How did you come up with that?
Well, I came up with it because I believed I had some rights as a woman. For example, I have gone to my grandchildren's school several times and I have been insulted. Well, nah, I had a really hard time. They had to help me. I had anxiety attacks and they had to take me to the hospital. And I was having a really tough time because it wasn't just once, it happened several times. I don't go anymore because I don't want to make a scene in front of my grandchildren, you know?
This needs to be explained. 4 years ago, your son and the woman who was then your daughter-in-law separated. There has been infidelity on her part, and your ex-daughter-in-law's reaction is to keep the grandchildren away from both your son and the grandparents. How long has it been since you hugged your grandchildren?
Well, it's been 4 years. I was luckier with the girl. I was at the school play last year at Christmas. I thought she had forgotten about me because when I stopped seeing her, she was just over 3 years old. She's going to turn 8 this year, right? And she saw me, she smiled at me, but when her mother called her, her face completely changed. And 10 minutes later, the police were there. Neither my son nor I have a restraining order. Nothing at all. We have nothing. He has won all the trials. I mean, we just don't understand it.
Look, we were saying that you've been mistreated, or at least you feel mistreated by your daughter-in-law.
I am, and I feel that way.
Of course, and you have no rights as an abused woman, and the 016 thing is just an example, right?
Exactly, because I call a phone number that's from the Ministry of Equality, right? Here, the word is equality. I understand that equality means it doesn't matter who calls, because whoever calls is someone who has a problem and wants help. But they don't help you. They only help women who are abused. There are really abused women and women who take advantage of this.
What did they tell you on that phone when you said, no, the one who abuses me is another woman, my ex-daughter-in-law?
They gave me another phone number and I called another one from that phone. And then they gave me a number so I could get a lawyer. I think it was on Princesa Street. But then I gave up and I said, look, I'm not going to get anything. They told me to file a lawsuit. I didn't file a lawsuit because it turns out that a lawsuit is like a never-ending cycle. You win, the judge gives you certain days when you can be with your grandchildren. But if the mother doesn't show up and says, no, nothing happens here. And it's lawsuit after lawsuit. And so I didn't go that far.
As a grandmother who's gone 4 years without seeing your grandchildren, you're not protected by the law. And your grandchildren aren't protected either when it comes to their right to see their father and their grandparents. That's how it is.
That's how it is. Because look, my son asked because since the mother wasn't complying so that the father could see the children, he asked the court if he could see them at the visitation center. He saw them twice at the visitation center, okay? And the children were very comfortable with their father and everything. They were a little shy at first, but then by the end, when their time with him was over, they were happy, cheerful. They made some drawings for him and said to give their grandparents kisses and all that. But the third time, the mother said that the children didn't want to see him. And that's how it's been for nearly a year.
You are a woman. You have raised children. You have raised grandchildren. How do you understand that the law twists itself to defend the woman even if she is the one responsible for breaking up a family?
I think that, let's see, I'm not sure if I can explain myself. I think they're politicizing all of this. These are ideas that women have fought for, to have the same rights as men. In the 70s, I was there. I don't remember if it was in 76 or when, for equality, so that we could have the same salary. So as a woman, back then you had to ask your husband for permission to open an account. I've never had to ask for permission. My husband has always let me. I was raised differently, so I don't understand that. Now, all they want is to crush men as if it were revenge for things that happened over a century ago or a century, let's say. And these feminists nowadays, I don't understand what they want. Because look, you have LGTBI. LGTBI, for example, if there's a problem between lesbians or gays, between couples, they're not going to help them either because it's between two women or two men. Here, it only applies if a man does this to a woman, but if the harm is done by the woman to the man, because there are women who also harm men psychologically. Like my son, who was told, I want to see you dead when my son was going through a really bad time. Thank goodness he still has some desire to be with his children, to live, and because I was by his side, but if not, maybe he could have taken his own life. If they're saying they want you dead, they want you dead.
There are people who have done it. There are even grandparents who, as time goes by and they don't see their grandchildren, have left this world without seeing them. It's very sad.
Well, it's sad because there are grandparents who have asked to be taken to say goodbye to their grandchildren and they haven't been allowed to. For example, we also have some parents who, because of illness or things like that, haven't been allowed either. That, for me, is inhumane. It's being cruel.
Right. You call those feminists, not all of them, those ones, the purple ones, right?
Exactly. Those feminists who seem like they don't have a father, don't have brothers, don't have sons. The thing is, if one day this affects you, we'll see how you react. You're not interested in knowing right now because you already have the information from in the state bulletin of all the men who are reported. They put them in jail, they get acquitted and all that, but then they have that for the rest of their lives. I can't find the word, who are already condemned, let's say, as if they were murderers. Huh? Yes. However, you have politicians, right? You have politicians who have been abusers, and nowadays I've read that on top of that, they've even been decorated, they've been given a medal. They don't want that to be known. I mean, there are cases coming out in political parties where there are also men who are abusers, rapists, or whatever, but they keep that well hidden, very quiet. They're not interested in making it public. And the real women, like us grandmothers, we are the ones truly being abused, and they don't care about that either. Also, despite talking about women a lot, they're not interested. All they want is their little rackets, their money. I don't even know how it works, just to set up more equality offices, and that's it. And not help the real victim.
Inmaculada, you...
And that can also be the man, right? Let's remember that. Men are victims too.
Without a doubt, you represent many forgotten victims. Many fathers, many grandchildren, many grandparents that nobody talks about and whose rights nobody protects. Since you spoke in Congress, have you received a good or bad reaction? Because there are all kinds of people.
Well, I haven't read everything, but I've read a lot of comments. I've only had to reply to one. Not really just to explain how things are. Because there are a lot of people who don't understand it, but most of them are good. I represent all those grandmothers who are quiet, who aren't allowed to speak. And that's why I want to see if someday all the politicians get together and talk with us about this issue, because I think the people who are going through this problem know a lot more about it, than the politicians themselves. Now, what do they want? More courts for gender-based violence? For what? What are they good for? What they should do is make sure there are fewer victims. What they need to do is make sure children don't go through what they're going through. Because if their father and mother get divorced, the nice thing is for them to have contact with both their mother and their father, and for the grandparents to be there too. Because children learn a lot from their grandparents. Grandparents If their parents can't care for them, the grandparents step in and help with everything. And we're not listened to either. I've already told you that we have to thank NAVID as well. It's the association that doesn't receive a single cent, okay? It has to be said. Because there are many associations that receive money and do nothing. And thanks to that, and then some politicians are listening to us a little. Otherwise, we'd remain silent.
I hope so. Let's keep fighting. Who would have told you at 70 years old that you would be there as the spokesperson for so many silenced people? I'm really glad. Inmaculada. Don't lower the battle axe. Keep it raised high. Get ready.
As long as I be healthy enough to do it, I will fight alongside my fellow members with all the grandmothers and grandfathers. I will be there fighting.
May you be able to hug your grandchildren very soon, Inmaculada.
Thank you. May God protect you. Sending you a kiss.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Get ready because today we have a very intense show. Well, I don't know what day we don't have a very intense one. But today, get ready because we'll be with Teresa Gomez. Ladies and gentlemen, the PSOE is allegedly trying to buy witnesses with money so they don't testify against Santos Cerdan. I know what I'm saying is very serious, but the details will be provided by this journalist from The Objective in a little while. And in the end, do you know about the famous sauna owned by Begoña Gomez's father? Well, the sauna, the apartment where Begoña Gomez's father lived and where her uncle still lives and other properties, they all belong to Mufase, the civil servants' mutual insurance under old rent-controlled leases paying next to nothing. 800 euros, a little more for commercial spaces, a 140 square meter penthouse. What's behind it? Doctor of Economics Guillermo Rocafort will tell us. An intense program. Well, if you're from the PSOE, don't watch it because you're going to get sick. So it's better to change the channel unless you want to discover the truth and understand that you're voting for an organized gang, which is what we believe is happening in this country. There are two brilliant minds who will help us understand that and much more. Mr. Alvaro de Marichalar, how are you?
Well, fine, thank God here, listening to you with great interest. And indeed, to the voters of the PSOE gang, I think it's important that they listen to your program. Because at least they find out about the consequences of their decision at the polls, which is to destroy their own lives and the lives of other Spaniards.
Yes, because they are co-responsible. We are what we vote for. When we've made a mistake, when we've messed up by voting, we have to accept that we're co-responsible. That's very well thought out. Ricardo Morado, businessman, logistics expert, and vice president of Giro 180. Have you ever regretted your vote?
Good to be with you both. Well, first of all, I have never regretted my vote because I have never voted for the PSOE. It has never even crossed my mind, and I highly doubt that will ever happen. I must have taken a really hard hit with a serious bruise. But I don't think so. Because every time I voted, I've done it conscientiously and after informing myself, which is something most PSOE voters don't do before voting. And that's really the problem.
People vote a bit based on ideology. Well, I confess that I have a lot of listeners who are very worried about what might happen in the war in Ukraine. Experts keep telling me that it's a bluff, that Sanchez is not prepared, nor does he plan to increase military spending. That von der Leyen is also just putting on a show for the public. Basically, the European army thing isn't moving forward, but I wouldn't bet on it anymore. I want you to listen to some friends who have left us messages about the war in Ukraine in the last few days. Meneses, Fabienne, Magdalena, Mark, Tony, and Jose Ramon. Listen, because people are really nervous.
Putin will never allow any NATO force on Ukrainian territory without a firm commitment from Trump on how to organize all of that, right? In Spain, we can't even protect the border between the Canary Islands and Africa We're considering sending troops where? We don't even protect the Bay of Melilla.
Macron is very interested in us continuing the war. He still has arms manufacturing. In fact, the FAMAS and now the AK-47, and he also has the FRF-2, which is the most powerful weapon in the world, which is French, and it's, well, the jewel of the French Navy. What does Macron have that you don't have here? The Legion. You have the Legion, but not like here.
Look, I've received reliable information that they're recruiting young Red Cross volunteers to send them to the war in Ukraine. They're asking them if they want to go, but for now that's just a question. As soon as things get tense, it will be an order, just like they're kidnapping and forcing 14-year-old children to go in Ukraine.
You've probably already heard the PP statements. They're going to support Pedro Sanchez on the 2% increase in spending on weapons, on armament to build up the state. I mean, to make people go defend Ukraine. So they want to send soldiers there. Honestly, powerless doesn't even begin to cover it.
This is a process, right? Agenda 2030, Agenda 2045, it doesn't matter, whatever name it has. And what if what they're actually doing in the end is that what they're doing is creating a huge problem? That could even lead to the outbreak of World War III, which could happen, and then they could reorganize the world again.
On a Russian political TV show, a general said that Europe is being financed by the Rothschilds, so that Ursula von der Leyen and all the other politicians here in Europe can start a war against Russia, so that later, when Europe is destroyed, England can take over Europe's entire economy and all its land.
Let me say, out of all the calls, Magdalena, it's not true that the Red Cross is recruiting volunteers. If they do it a month from now, I wouldn't say no, I wouldn't swear to it. But right now, no, not to go there and fight. They are accepting volunteers to go there for what they call humanitarian aid. You know, taking some pictures, making some videos, and then coming back here to raise a ton of public money. They're experts at that. Let's see, Alvaro, you know well what we're talking about. There are a lot of doubts, a lot of fear, a lot of misinformation, because with the government that Spain and Europe have, anything can happen, right?
We are facing another smokescreen very similar to the COVID epidemic and other issues that we Europeans and the rest of the Western world are suffering to satisfy the interests of an elite, a so-called elite, a mafia. That's what industrial corporations, arms manufacturers, banks, and so on are, who are the ones controlling the fate of Europe. We must not forget that the PP or Brussels, PSOE, or any institution that has power over Europeans, they are run by four clueless people, really, by four members whom we see in Davos every year. I mean, these are people who are trying to destroy identity. In the case of Europe, it's European identity, which is our Christian identity, inherited from Greece, from Rome, and from what Spain did. What is being done with Russia is the same thing that was done with Spain. Spain was dismembered, fragmented, balkanized for the interests of the Anglo-Saxon world. That's how it is. So now the same thing is being done. The Anglo-Saxon world is afraid of a large Europe, of a united Europe, which is impossible to achieve without Russia's collaboration, because Europe without Russia does not exist. Russia can exist without Europe. It's powerful enough, but not vice versa. They want to divide us. And that's why when there are elections, for example, like now in Romania, where there is a candidate who says what I just said, they cancel him, they ban him, but also to anyone else who dares to go against this trend of trying to divide, which is what any empire has always done. Rome, starting with them, divides and conquers. Trump, the speech he gave at his inauguration, the vice president's intervention in Munich, and especially the meeting with Zelensky on February 28th at the White House was the turning point in this whole trajectory. Why? Because the current American administration is putting the truth on the table. They are putting on the table that the money, the funds, the resources of the American taxpayer through USAID, American aid, which is basically what that kind of CIA financial arm is called, because that's all it is the one that caused the Maidan in 2014. That's where the trouble began. The problem started there. It's a legitimate government, and Victoria Nuland, as we know very well, $5 billion financing that coup d'etat. That movement destroyed the legitimate will of the Ukrainian people and set Ukrainians against each other and against their sister or almost mother, which is Russia. Or daughter, since we know Kiev was the Russian Empire's capital for 3 centuries. So we have to know that, and we as Europeans must not let ourselves be by that group of despicable people who are trying not only to steal our identity, but to make us pay for that outrage with our money and even with our lives. Now that they want to send troops to a sister nation, which is Ukraine, which they have set against another sister nation of ours, of all Europeans, which is Russia, well, we have to know that. We have to know that NATO betrayed Russia in that Warsaw Pact after the Warsaw Pact was dissolved. After Russia accepted the German reunification, and we, the Western world, NATO, betrayed Russia, expanding our power, our presence to places where we promised not to expand even an inch, as we remember very well happened in the 90s. We need to know that. There has been a great betrayal. They try to brainwash us against Russia instead of helping us unite with Russia and create a greater Europe that can compete against the real adversary, which is China. Well, look how well their plan worked out. They've set Russia against the rest of Europe and turned it into an arm of China.
Who do you think pulled off this move?
¿Quién crees que ha hecho?
Because you've lived in Moscow for years, and I remember you really experienced both the good and the bad of Putin. There's a bit of everything, but there's only one truth, not two. Who is provoking this confrontation?
Exactly. I've been in Russia since '84, so I've already seen Gorbachev, Yeltsin, Putin, and so on. I've spent half the year there for 35 years. I know the subject very well. Putin has a party, to put it simply, called United Russia. Why? Because the big problem for Russia is that it could become Balkanized, that it could stop being a country because it's too big, too powerful, too rich, and its population is too small. Very few people, there aren't many people. What Russia needs is to stay united. And to stay united, it needs to bring together all those major racial and religious groups. In short, well, Russia is very big. It's 18 million square kilometers. So what does Putin do? He unites Russia and shields it from those who want to divide it, which is basically the Anglo-Saxon world that uses us, the rest of us Europeans, for their own particular and exclusive interests. Because you tell me, what does a German, a Spaniard, or an Italian gain after Nord Stream 2 was blown up by the Americans? What do we gain? Nothing. We lose everything. Among other things, we are forced to buy American liquefied gas at triple the price. Of course, we still keep buying Russian gas because there's no other choice. It's all a big fallacy. It's a huge scam, and we have to stay alert to avoid it.
Just to clarify, those 2 attacks on the pipelines, the first and the second, it seems clear that Zelensky and the United States are behind it, right? It's already something that's accepted. I mention it because at first the Kremlin was accused of carrying out the attack. Over time, the intelligence agencies themselves have confirmed it. You've said something very important, Ricardo Morado, and I don't want it to happen because it affects us very closely. This is a plan that already started in Spain with Felipe González. Do you remember when a good part of this country's industry was destroyed, when the peseta was changed to the euro, when there was the industrial restructuring, steel, coal? Well, all of that, Morado, you and I have lived through it. General strikes, impoverishment of the population. Spain was an industrial country, and they turned it into a service economy, with all due respect, but it's bars and hotels and tourism, which is the industry that works best. What Alvaro says, and I think he's right, is that this is a pre-established plan. Do you agree with him?
I totally agree. It's a perfectly laid out plan. Also, I can give you an example that's close to my home. In Ferrol, we had a shipyard called Bazan. Because of that restructuring starting in 82, it went down the drain and wasn't converted into anything. In other words, the frantic economic activity that the region where I live used to have suddenly dropped to zero overnight, and that's how we've been ever since. This example, which is a local one, can be extrapolated to the rest of Spain. They have deindustrialized us in exchange for nothing, precisely to achieve that goal that Alvaro is mentioning right now, which is that disunity, that loss of our own identity, that selling ourselves for a few miserable euros or a few miserable dollars to the Anglo-Saxon power, with the sole objective that as an entity, Europe does not have the strength that makes them feel threatened or could make them feel threatened. Europe could be a very strong economic threat to the Anglo-Saxon world. And now we are not anymore because they have achieved that objective.
Of course, for example, Germany and England are the United Kingdom and France, are leading this defense. We're going to create a European army. Spain has no say and nothing to do there, but why are they doing it? Led by someone personal interests? What's going on there?
It's hard for me to believe that this sudden defense of European interests is real. I don't know what Alvaro thinks, but it's really hard for me to believe that von der Leyen is actually saying that seriously, just like it's hard for me to believe that Pedro Sanchez is willing to invest a single euro to make that happen. It's another thing to make empty promises, but we already know that empty promises won't get us anywhere. So, of course, it's very hard to believe any of the words coming from European leaders, who are precisely the ones that brought us to where we are now. It's very hard to navigate that context.
But what strong European leader is there now? Just one Meloni, there's no one else.
Meloni, and only on odd days.
Orban, maybe Orban in Hungary, not many more. Alvaro, what do you think?
Well, the only European leader who is really seeing things as they truly are is Orban, without a doubt. And then Meloni, who also sees it. You have to listen to the president of the Italian Republic, what he said yesterday in southern Italy at a business meeting where he is saying exactly what we are saying, right? It's clear. It's obvious. To say that, you have to be very brave because you're going completely against the tide. And so the problem is that, as I said, our politicians here are acting at the behest of special interests. Everything that happened, for example, during the epidemic, all those absurd, illegal, illegitimate, immoral decisions were forced to be adopted by the pharmaceutical companies, by the foundations of this criminal, the diabolical Soros, all these open scoundrels who are the ones running the world. They're the ones in charge. I mean, who gives orders to Sanchez? Sanchez is a puppet of that Soros guy and this diabolical agenda. It's a diabolical agenda. We have to realize what that agenda is. It's something diabolical. It's trying to turn people against each other.
It's clear.
To divide and dominate us as much as possible. But to know what's happening, let's study history and understand how Spanish America gained independence from the mother country, Spain. We see everything there because the same people are repeating history for the same reasons.
Yes, I want you to watch this video circulating on social media. It's signed by someone called Athos Hall of Spain. And there's an old TV with an antenna, and it says, "Your fear gives them control." Watch it and I'll tell you about it. 1960, they said oil would run out in 10 years. All the TV channels reported it. In 68, they said there would be overpopulation all over the world. In 70, famine in 10 years. And in 72, a new ice age by 2030. In 74, the TV said oil would run out in 10 years. And in 78, that the ozone layer was disappearing, that we would die. imminent global cooling in 1980. In 88, by 2018, the Maldives under the sea. Famine in 10 years, again in 2002. In 2004, Siberia will be like Great Britain. The Arctic will have no ice in 2015. All of these are headlines provided by the press. Carbon dioxide will kill us all. 2019. It's all climate change's fault, and they even dare to joke. It says in 2025, aliens will invade us. And the video ends by saying, turn off the TV. Well, this, which seems silly, isn't. Because looking back, I remember those warnings. I've done special programs about there being no oil. It's going to run out. The world is ending. Or Cadiz is going to be flooded because the Arctic ice is melting. This, Morado, you and I, we've done special programs about it. It was all a lie. The ultimate goal was to provoke fear. And now the fear is your son could go to war. And I ask you, who benefits from provoking this fear? Not just here. Because here, honestly, Sanchez, we don't believe it. But maybe in Germany, in Great Britain, in France, they do. Who benefits from spreading this false rumor that your son might have to go fight and doesn't want to go? Or he could die on a front line like Ukrainians and Russians who didn't want to go, who were forced by their country. Morado, who benefits?
The same people as always benefit, those who want to keep us docile and soft in the face of all the decisions being made behind the scenes, many of which have nothing to do with this. Those are the ones who benefit. A class of entrenched leaders used to pulling the strings since the 70s and even before. You mentioned earlier that in 1980 there was an alarming headline about global cooling. Now it's just the opposite, global warming. This is cyclical, but in the end, it's always the same tactic. It doesn't matter what they use. As Alvaro was saying a moment ago, we saw it during the pandemic. They use fear to keep us docile and calm so that no one rises up against the established power and against a system that has been rotten at its core for many years. Those are the ones who win, the same ones who have been winning for 20, 30, 40 years.
You know what the government is like in Russia, Alvaro? I've noticed that he doesn't want to attack. Come on, Biden made it easy for him. He was about to leave the presidency and started talking about letting Ukraine launch missiles. Well, what do you expect? Start a war before leaving? And he didn't do it. What would Putin's reaction be?
Well, Biden needed a war to justify and to cover up everything that Trump is uncovering now. He needed it and he tried to provoke it. He came across an intelligent, moderate person, Putin. But of course, given everything we're being told and the way Putin is being portrayed, but you have to realize that Putin, within the administration and within the Russian political class, is the most moderate one. I know everyone there, you wouldn't believe it. They don't have that much patience. Realize that with all the provocations Russia has faced, they've now reached Kazan, 600 kilometers from the Russian border. Just last night, they sent 4 drones. They've killed countless families. It's nonstop. The provocation is constant. The provocation, for example, from the little Napoleon apprentice, that Macron guy, is constant. He's nobody in France anymore. No one respects him. No one supports him. He's just trying to squeeze out one last gasp before his political death. It's all a pose and it's all a scam. Right now, what we have to keep in mind is that the Russian people support their president. The Russian people are the most anti-communist people on the face of the earth because they are vaccinated against communism. The Russian Communist Party, which still exists, doesn't even get 8% of the popular vote at the polls. And Putin is trying to create peace in Europe. Let's not forget what's happening in other parts of the world, no matter how much the press and public opinion demonize him. Precisely because what he wants is stability that keeps us away from the great danger of a nuclear conflict, which is what many people are looking for to try to cover up their shame, their deficits, and their corruption. So what we have to do is be aware of it, recognize it, and support all the policies that are in favor of the peace that Europe needs.
All right. Fernando sent us this poster, which has a lot to do with what Alvaro de Marichalar is talking about. This demon of destruction has become very fashionable. It's like the demon of the apocalypse holding an hourglass in his hand. And he's called Lord Norcam, Norcam is Macron spelled backwards. I'm told that in Paris and all over France, he has become a very popular character. Because it's true, the French president is not at his peak of popularity among his own people. Quite the opposite, actually. Well, gentlemen, we'll talk about these, but tonight on the special, Alvaro de Marichalar was on the first one. Today we're doing a new special dedicated to Donald Trump with Lieutenant Colonel Francisco Vendala. Donald Trump, it's been months since he took office. Victim or executioner, hero or murderer, crazy as some call him, or savior. We want to know your opinion tonight. Stay tuned to this channel as always, and also to Castillon Confidential Live. Subscribe because we need to make it grow. We start at 8 o'clock sharp, 7 in the Canary Islands with Alvaro. They still remember your participation in the first show. You were brilliant, Alvaro. Congratulations. Congratulations. Well, I have more messages from people who are very concerned about the army you were talking about. The European army, I want you to listen to Ignacio Ameneses and Sofia.
It's clear our contribution to the European army is going to be a low-cost, minimum-wage troop, ready to die on the cheap in the human meat grinder of Ukraine.
It seems pretty absurd, doesn't it, that they're suddenly going to urgently invest 800 billion euros to rearm Europe when, well, anyone knows that with Europe's lack of industrial capacity, that money will end up going to the coffers of the United States as well, since we'll be buying most of the weapons from them because the arms industry in Europe is practically non-existent now. It's also absurd to think that this rearmament will happen within a year just because we put that money on the table. We're talking about at least a decade, and it also seems absurd that they're announcing it so loudly in all the media.
800 million of our money, which is not really to wage war against Russia, but to arm Europe. I think they're the ones who created the emergency by saying they have to defend democracy. But what democracy? If anything, it's more of a dictatorial regime.
And I listened to Yolanda Diaz. I've never seen her so nervous, imprecise, yes, hesitant, incoherent. That's every day. A woman who lacks intelligence, it's obvious. They ask her, well, what about it? Are you going to support it or not? Now they're saying they'll reach 3%, which nobody believes, of GDP on military spending here in Spain. Listen to how she responds to the journalist. The tone is the problem.
Within Sumar, there are different perspectives, Izquierda Unida, Compromís, and they have mentioned that they are against her leadership.
This is the journalist's question.
I just answered this. This is Sumar's position. Beyond the nuances that each political party may have, I just answered your colleague about this issue.
But to the exact question of increasing...
To the exact question of whether to increase or not, I have already answered you. I already answered you.
Now you really haven't answered?
Yes, I have answered because I believe that the position political parties have today, even the opposition, is to assess what our country needs and to do so within the framework of coordinating personnel and economic resources in Europe. A Europe that has a bigger defense budget than Russia. And I'll leave it here because we'll wait for the outcome of the ongoing debate and you will find out about it.
Well, and silencing the press because I don't feel like saying yes when those who voted for me expect me to say no. That's how it is, Alvaro, right? Nothing more, nothing less.
That's how things are, but of course we're in the hands of these scoundrels, which is Spain's tragedy. But I insist, sometimes I can go on a bit about history, but history is really important because history shows us the path to the present. Look, and for those who don't know, study a bit about what Sagasta did in the Cuban War. How he sold out to Anglo-Saxon interests for, they say, 2 million pesetas or something like that from that time. Just imagine. Just imagine how far the betrayal went by that prime minister who betrayed Spain and the soldiers who died in the Cuban War when we lost Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Cuba. I mean, everything was rigged, but it was also rigged. Bolivar, who was he? Bolivar was Spanish and he was a traitor. I mean, in the end, it's all the same, and the same people bribe the same people to create the same result and get their huge profits. Until Europe sees this, Europe will keep being the street of those who destroy Europe.
Yes, yes. Well, I looked up the information.
This individual you just mentioned, by the way, is actually a pretty key figure because she still has support that unfortunately is still somewhat relevant in Spain.
Spain sold Cuba just like it sold the Philippines. It sold Cuba because of the debt that Cuba had, which amounted to $400 million, and agreed to grant Cuba its independence. And it sold the Philippines to the United States for 20 million more. Come on, this was a total free-for-all back then. It was the worst you could possibly imagine. In the end, Yolanda Diaz, who is nobody and nobody votes for her and nobody supports her, and she never became vice president because of anyone's vote, will do whatever her master tells her, right? And that's Sanchez Ricardo. She's Galician like you, and you know how fake this woman is?
Exactly. I know her well, and besides the way she just acted in this intervention, which is just pathetic because she doesn't want to answer the question she's being asked, which is the question that needs to be asked, why doesn't she want to answer? You've already given the answer, Albert, because she can't say what she really wants to say. Beyond that, besides being intellectually bankrupt, she's just another puppet serving Pedro Sanchez. She'll stay there, as we've discussed, Albert, for as long as Pedro Sanchez wants. When she's no longer useful, he'll get rid of her like he has with others. She doesn't matter at all, and less each time. In fact, in the latest polls about voting that have come out, I think they've already taken away around 20 to 25 seats from her in one go. I mean, the blow she's going to take in the next elections is going to be monumental. That's when Pedro Sanchez will no longer see her as useful and get rid of her. Yolanda has been an opportunist her whole life. I've known her well since she was a councillor here at Feral City Hall. And she has always climbed by stepping on others. Remember the famous phrase by Jose Manuel Beras, former leader of the BNGA, in which he said that the greatest political disappointment he had experienced and the greatest betrayal he had received had come from Yolanda Diaz. History, as Alvaro says, you have to know history to be able to interpret the messages it presents.
Ask Pablo Iglesias, ask Iglesias about Yolanda Diaz.
Exactly the same. She's been a traitor since birth.
Well, friends, give me a minute. I'm going to tell you how the PSOE allegedly tries to bribe witnesses who accuse it of taking kickbacks in a minute.
You're listening to Castillon Confidential.
Gentlemen, we've been telling you this for months now. Both the PSOE and the government are maneuvering to put an end to the corruption cases surrounding Sanchez, his family, and the party. The government is doing this by using every legal lever, the state attorney's office, the prosecutor's office, and so on. And PSOE headquarters is allegedly buying witnesses. What I'm saying is very serious. But that's what happened to a woman, do you remember Carmen Pano? Yes, that woman who said, I took 90,000 euros to the Ferras headquarters. Well, a law firm very close to the PSOE has offered her 50,000 euros in exchange for forgetting about the story and not mentioning Santos Zerdan. In some way, they're indicating where the supposed 50,000 euros are coming from. By Teresa Gomez from Objective. How are you, dear?
How are you? Very well.
This is incredible already. What else is left for us to see? Let's see, Carmen Pano, according to your report, on Friday, February 21st at 8 o'clock, she goes to a law firm called IDBO on Serrano Street, number 32 in Madrid. And there, after a conversation and several phone calls, they make her the offer of 50,000 euros and tell her to forget about everything. Is that right?
That's right. They tell her, you forget about everything. You have to retract. You have to take back your statement about having handed over 90,000 euros on Ferraz Street. And besides, you must not mention Santos Zerdan, sorry, and Angel Victor Torres. In her statement, well, they offer her 50,000 euros in exchange. We have to remember that right now Carmen Pano has her accounts frozen, so she can't pay for basic services like electricity or rent. They assure her not to worry and promise to handle the rent. And since her daughter is getting married in the next few months, they would also pay for the wedding. In exchange, what did Carmen have to do?
I can't believe it. I know that the daughter asked for the accounts to be unlocked, right? So she could get married while the investigation is ongoing. So you're saying that besides the 50,000, they also paid the rent for my house?
The 50,000 euros also included the payment for the wedding. That's right. And they offer her, 50,000 euros in exchange for her to retract her statement. So obviously she is aware that she can't testify the opposite of what she already declared before the UCO, because then she would be prosecuted for a new crime, which is the crime of perjury. So she testifies in the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court, they ask her about these 90,000 euros that she claims she took to the Socialist Party headquarters on the orders of Victor de Aldama, and she confirms that this was indeed the case. But she doesn't give any more details because they don't ask her about Santos Cerdan or about Angel Victor Torres or about other details that she might have known. So all she does is answer without giving any more information beyond what she's asked. And indeed, they confirm this. So after her statement, they get angry in the office and say that there won't be any agreement and that the negotiations are stopped. And well,
the meeting is prior to her statement in the Supreme Court. And since she didn't divert attention away, now they don't want to pay her what they agreed to, though there really wasn't any deal, right?
Exactly. What they wanted was for her to say that the 90,000 euros thing wasn't true, that she went to deliver an A4 envelope, but that she didn't know what was inside that envelope. So since she...
But hey, who? Because here there's a woman that you identify as Leticia de la Hoz. I only know that she's the lawyer of Coldo's brother, Joseba Garcia. Who is this woman?
She's the lawyer of Joseba Garcia, of Coldo's brother, and of Coldo's wife, Patricia Yuris. She's also their lawyer. And she's the lawyer who contacts Carmen Pano as a representative of the Socialist Party. And in those meetings, when she offered Carmen Pano an option, like 50,000 euros during that same negotiation, she would leave the room. She would talk to someone else. It's not clear whether it was by phone or in person because Carmen Pano couldn't see who she was talking to since she kept leaving the room. And then she would come back in and say, well, the Socialist Party accepts this. Or the Socialist Party says...
Do you think it was Santos Cerdan?
Who was Leticia de la Hoz talking to? I don't know because Carmen Pano doesn't know who she was talking to.
It was someone from the PSOE.
From the Socialist Party, of course. And she was simply acting as an intermediary for the Socialist Party.
I understand. It's all absurd, far-fetched, ridiculous. It could have been a setup. You also say that in the report. Careful, maybe what they wanted was to get rid of her, to discredit her as a serious witness, which is what she is today, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, the Socialist Party is trying, they're desperate, of course. So they're trying to discredit all those witnesses who are key to the case. Victor Daldama himself also said on television that deals were being offered to several witnesses. And I know for a fact that this is true, that they are contacting several complainants, even from Luis Garburo's firm, to change their statements. And be careful, because that's a crime.
That's a crime, but bribing a witness is even more so. This is an attempt at bribery. That is, the Socialist Party is maneuvering to buy witnesses. This is extremely serious.
That's right. But Albert, since we're going from scandal to scandal, it seems like we're numb and absolutely nothing happens. At another time, this would have been it would have been on every news broadcast, but it's true that right now the Socialist Party has gotten us used to one scandal after another.
Teresa Gomez tomorrow for sure. And the day after, more chapters of this corruption. What times we're living in. You are incorruptible like me. I mean, holding up the dignity of journalism here. A big hug, dear. Thank you.
A huge kiss.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Look, sometimes I get videos that you send me and they make me think a lot. This is one of them. It's Vito. He's a worker. He's self-employed, and suddenly he wonders why he works so many hours a day just to barely make it, if he even does, to the end of the month. And not be able to have a better future. Alvaro de Marichala, Ricardo Morado, please, I invite you to listen to and watch this video.
Right now I'm thinking that I have a problem, you know? And I think that most of you also have a problem. If we work from Monday to Friday, 8 hours a day, just to pay off debts and be able to eat decently, what are we? Workers or slaves? I have Saturday and Sunday off. On Saturday, I spend the whole day lying in bed recovering. I can't even move. And on Sunday, I spend the whole day thinking that I have to go to work on Monday. Seriously, what are we? And I'm really asking, you know? Are we workers or slaves?
The video has gone viral, and I understand why, Ricardo. There are a lot of people like him working 12, 10, 15 hours. You earn more money, but you only keep half of it. More than 50% goes to taxes to be spent on things that shouldn't exist. And all that for what, right? I understand that concern.
The answer to the question this man is asking is clear. We are slaves. Because those who are lucky enough to work only 8 hours, 5 days a week can consider themselves fortunate. Normally, people work much more than that. And of those hours we work, the system itself, because we are slaves, but to a specific system, the one we live in and suffer under, the system makes sure to take most of what we earn so that we can't prosper. That is the fundamental problem. Not just in this country, but in Western civilization as a whole right now. But in this country, we are experiencing it much more intensely. We work more than 9 months just to pay the state.
That's true, but it wasn't always like this, Ricardo. I remember times back when I was a child with my parents, when everyone, even the humblest, my father was a mechanic shop manager and my mother was a seamstress. And, you know, most families could afford to go away on vacation, and some even had a second home. Or the time of the real estate boom, call it whatever you want, but you could pay off your house or buy another one, and property values had gone up so much that you could pay off the previous one. What happened to all that, Ricardo?
What happened, and allow me a bit of poetic license, is that the Generalissimo didn't have to pay the colipoteras. But for today's politicians, we do have to pay for them. In addition to various narcotic substances, which they pay for with our money. So the difference is that as the years have gone by, the class, the disgusting political caste that rules us, has gotten so comfortable and has dedicated itself to living the high life, with one consequence, which is that at this moment, all those who are in important positions have never done an honest day's work in their lives. They have no qualifications whatsoever and only focus on surviving within politics. And to do that, you have to be willing to do anything. You have to be willing to steal from the taxpayer, take full advantage of the system, and use all the resources of the state for your own benefit. And that's the difference between the times our parents and grandparents lived in and the times we're living in right now. And the difference is that the current political class, I remember the first constituent assemblies where those politicians were also professionals from different sectors and were the best in their fields. Right now, who do we have? Avalos, is that who we have? Do we have Oscar Puente in charge of the Ministry of Transport? What experience does he have? What knowledge does he have about that subject? And Pilar Alegría. Who is Pilar Alegría? What merit does Pilar Alegría have? What is Pilar Alegría qualified in? To hold the position she's supposed to be holding. Most of them are functional illiterates. And most of them haven't paid into Social Security for a single day, haven't made payroll, and wouldn't even know how to interpret one. So, of course, we're in the hands of our own enemy. And that's precisely why we, the citizens, are the ones who are slaves to that corrupt system that feeds off our work. Only and exclusively because they have no other way to survive except by leeching off our own taxes. And every year that goes by, every January that comes around, we find ourselves with the surprise that food prices go up, that taxes go up, that gasoline is 9 cents more, that there's more here, more there. And as it all adds up, we realize that at the end of the road, at the end of that question, that this person who made that video asks, I don't know his name, but I admire him because he has opened his eyes and is aware of his own reality. At the end of that road, we realize that we are solely and exclusively slaves to the rotten system that the ruling political class is making us suffer.
I want you to see what Sylvia sent. She sent us 2 photos from a real estate agency that's very close to Sor Angela de la Cruz Street. That's where Abalos and the scheme supposedly paid for an apartment for Jessica so she wouldn't talk. And she says, these are the prices near Sor Angela de la Cruz Street. I've heard all week here where I work that one of Abalos' lovers lives around here. That's where our taxes go. The cheapest one, €1 million, 1,200,000, 1,300,000, 3 bedrooms. These are the apartments in the area where Jessica lives. We all pay for that, Alvaro, somehow, for sure.
We all clearly pay for it in this tax hell, in this tax dictatorship, which is exactly what the current rotten regime we're suffering under in Spain is. Exactly. That's why they go after Franco so much, who is nothing more than the half of Spain that won a war started by the half of Spain that lost. Let's never forget that. Where the state was minimal, it was efficient and turned Spain from nothing into the 7th industrial power in the world, right? Today we are living under a fiscal dictatorship. Let's not forget that. An abject fiscal dictatorship that is being run by the scum of society. I mean, because when you see Abalos, Pedro Sanchez, Yolanda Diaz, you see the scum of society. I mean, the worst kind of criminals, the worst, really, the worst. The brother of that Sanchez or that Puente, just by looking at their faces, the face is the mirror of the soul. You can see they are common criminals, but they've managed to seize power because they've brainwashed the people who vote, right? And universal suffrage, well, it's very dangerous because, of course, we're seeing it, right? So in the end, what they do is strengthen their power and make it endless at our expense by robbing us.
We hear you, yes, yes.
By robbing us of something very important, huh? They're not just taking our money, but our lives too. Because money, in the end, is work time. It's time from our lives. These sons of Satan are stealing time from our lives.
Don't say it.
About this, faced with our, of course, our silence, they take advantage of our silence, our cowardly complacency. And that's what we have to fight, cowardice.
We are with Ricardo from Galicia, with Alvaro de Marichalar from Panama, and about the government and Sanchez messages that have been left at 649532435, Ana, Valentin, Diego, Maria, Teresa, Maru, and Ani.
A government that has gone so long without approving a budget, where everything is approved by decree law, something that is done, let's say, routinely and has to be approved by decree law, means it's non-negotiable. In other words, I put it forward and approve it.
Do you remember when Pedro Sanchez said he was going to build a wall against the far right, the right, and whoever was next to the right? Well, the only thing he has built is a wailing wall where more and more Spaniards go to cry about their desperate situation.
Mathematically, the criminal, the monster, we already know who I'm talking about, right? Yes, to the great Pedro, the criminal Pedro, the traitor, Spain's #1 traitor. His time is almost up. Mathematically, yes, but we have to speed that process up. Greetings to everyone.
Well, okay, they're going to get caught in this and that and the other thing. But this weekend, they'll make a new law that will be passed in the shadows and no one will go to jail. We do nothing, right? Sometimes that causes you anxiety.
I'm Venezuelan. I lived in Spain for 4 years. My husband is Spanish. I have a son who was born in Spain. Because of other circumstances, we had to come to the United Kingdom. But every time I hear about what's happening in Spain, it feels like deja vu, because the same thing that happened in Venezuela is happening there.
You mentioned that Abalos, when he was dismissed or whatever, went to the mixed group. I mean, what happens is that in that group, they decide whether to let him in or not, despite his bad reputation, and they open the doors for him. Because I can't imagine any politician who wants to join a group just saying, oh, I'll leave here and go there. Why? Then maybe we should investigate the mixed group, right? They're covering something up, don't you think?
Yes, but my friend, the mixed group is for those who don't have a party or there aren't enough members to form a group. They're not united in the mixed group by any ideology. That's where whatever's left goes. You leave the party because you get pissed off. You don't want to give up your seat because you want to keep your immunity, which is what happened to Abalos because he knows what he's done. And the best way to stay there, to be able to, pardon me, allegedly erase a bunch of evidence for months is the mixed group. And that way you keep erasing, it's true, allegedly evidence until the UCO comes and grabs what they can, right? That's right. There's no need to overthink it. I have some information that seems very serious to me. I'm saying this because nobody talks about it, and that's kind of our goal here. Esther sent it to me about the arrest of a group of Pakistanis last weekend.
This morning I heard that they had arrested 10 Pakistanis because they were following people to behead them in Spain. In Spain, not in Afghanistan, in Spain. And I think it was Catalonia, but I'm not sure.
Yes, my friend, yes, and I'm going to tell you how serious this story is. The National Police, Mossos d'Esquadra, and Italian police dismantled a jihadist cell in Barcelona. They had a list of targets to behead. They had selected people who criticized Islam on social media to behead. We need to thoroughly investigate the radical Pakistani group. It's called Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan. And there were Spaniards in the group as well. And on the list of people to behead, there were Spaniards, people from other European countries, activists, public figures, journalists, and anonymous users. They tracked social networks, caught them, and arrested 10 of them in Barcelona. Montcada, Ireixac, Sabadell, Santa Coloma de Gramenet, Barcelona and the surrounding area. They have arrested 10. And 6, the judge has determined that they should be released, that it wasn't that serious. Maybe instead of decapitating them, they just filed their nails. I'm not even going to tell you how the National Police, the Mossos, and especially the Italian police are just stunned by our judges. Can someone explain this to me, Morado? Are we crazy?
There's nothing. There's no explanation, Albert. The only possible explanation is that there's some kind of hidden interest. Because madness alone doesn't justify this judicial action. Someone will have to be killed. A head will have to appear on a sidewalk before we start taking these kinds of threats seriously. Let me tell you, they've arrested these people, but that doesn't mean there aren't other groups exactly like them operating right now.
Let's investigate. Let's investigate this Pakistani group because there's a very large Pakistani population in Barcelona. And Isabel draws my attention to this. She sends me these Galician photos, Ricardo. Isabel says that in Galicia, and it's true, all official documents are now only sent to you in Galician. And as proof, she sends me 2 documents. She says, before they used to do it in 2 languages, Galician and Spanish, now only in Galician. What's going on in Galicia, Ricardo?
Well, in Galicia, something is happening that has been going on for a very long time. I remember that Alberto Núñez Feijóo became president of the Xunta de Galicia, promising parents that we would be able to choose the language in which our children would be schooled. He lied. He lied to Gloria Lago from Hablamos Español. He lied to her face and then did whatever he wanted. And from those actions, we have these consequences. Now, if you want to receive an official communication from the Xunta de Galicia in Spanish, you have to request it because they send it to you only in Galician. So Spain right now is a place where in Catalonia, the Basque country, and Galicia, you can't speak the language of our own country. You also can't speak to the administration in our country's native language because it's almost a crime. And I don't like to talk in these terms, but it's the truth about what we've been experiencing in Galicia for a very long time. I'm telling you, it's been decades.
It's crazy. What's wrong with us, Alvaro? We hate the best language in the world.
Well, it's manipulation, it's fear, it's turning taxpayers into mere objects at the service of an absolutely despicable caste that uses any trick to pit us against each other and spread terror, just like Ricardo said earlier. And language is one of the weapons they have, because there's no doubt that there's no greater terror than not understanding what they're saying to you. Besides, public institutions are supposed to be respectable, right? It's crazy, but more than crazy, it's once again the consequence of the cowardice of, in this case, the Galicians who keep voting for the Popular Party in Galicia, knowing that the Popular Party betrays their interests. Not just agricultural, not just fishing related, though those two, but industrial as well, of course. But it's also their interests in being able to communicate or educate their children in one of the most important languages in the world, which is Spanish, right? Hey, Galician is another Spanish language. Basque is a Spanish language. Catalan is a Spanish language. But Castillon is the Spanish that brings everyone together, and it should always be protected everywhere. Anyone who doesn't demand that isn't demanding respect for themselves. And that's a tragedy.
Friends, we're going to the newsroom. Susana Gas, last messages.
In the Castillon Confidential newsroom, receiving, as always, many interesting messages. Here's one from Pepe. She says, my support and gratitude to all the UCO agents and those in charge. You are our guarantee. Don't give in to harassment. Law-abiding citizens know your situation and support you. Thank you sincerely. Marisol Santiago also says, Morocco is a friendly country, especially without limits, since Sanchez and Pegasus, knowing what the government had on their phones would be what's important. And they receive the benefits right there. A Spaniard is not allowed to move without justification. And if you break the rule, they take away months of benefits. This is what they call equality. Ursula says that there are many of us who think that Sanchez should have been out a long time ago, that you, Mr. Castillon, are also saying so. But you have to know that his power is so great that he is sitting in his chair and firmly entrenched. It even seems like a miracle to me that he could ever disappear. Rafael Rueda tells us about taking money out of the bank. He hasn't had money in the bank for 5 years, and he explains to us, I keep it at home, and when I have to pay a bill, I take my money and pay it. If we closed all our accounts and took out our money for 15 days, maybe we could get Sanchez out. Congratulations on the show too. Francisco says that until the late 70s, women had to go to church with a headscarf and different rules for entering and dress. With Islam, we've gone back almost 40 years, and remember that tonight at around 8 o'clock, we start our live show with Albert Castillon. And we're going to do it on 2 channels, on Castillon Confidential, which I hope a lot of people will join, from 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the Canary Islands, and Castillon Confidential Live. We're going to do both at the same time. And we're also the only YouTube channel that opens up phone lines, so you can call us from your homes and share your opinions with us, with Albert Castillon. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much. And thanks also to David, who sent us a congratulatory message that really moved us.
First, I want to thank you for everything you're doing. You've become a beacon of information. A beacon never deceived you. It was a light you had there in the storm. It didn't depend on radio or on whether you got a good signal or not. You saw the light and knew there was trouble there. And they were always in places you knew were problematic. Well, that's your channel. Honestly, it's a beacon of information and respect.
Nice, guys. They called us a beacon. It's true that here the waters are constantly in turmoil. There are rocks, and you could end up going under, really. And they want us to sink. But for now, we keep the beacon lit and we stay in the trenches. Alvaro de Marichalar, my eternal gratitude for being with me every week. Hugs, my friend.
An honor, and we have to help power that lighthouse however we can.
Thank you, my dear Ricardo Morado. A pleasure. Thank you, my friend. Keep it up.
Hugs, dear. Hugs.
Hugs. Friends, how is it possible that in this country, a mutual health fund for civil servants owns a gay sauna that belongs to the father-in-law of the Prime Minister? We ask ourselves that question. Yes, it's very simple. Don Sabiniano's establishments in a minute.
You're listening to Castillon Confidential.
Gentlemen, this country is different from all the others and not always for the better, right? Sometimes it is. What is a general mutual insurance provider for civil servants doing there? Very simple. Everyone knows it. It has a real estate catalog of apartments. Well, it has a catalog of apartments and commercial spaces for rent or auction. It's one of those things that doesn't make sense. A mutual insurance society that provides healthcare coverage for civil servants that ends up almost being a real estate agency. But that's how it is. And Mufase, which is public, also has many of those apartments with old rent contracts from before 1985, which makes it easier for there to be tricks, for people to use connections to get an old rent contract for a great apartment in downtown Madrid, for example. You know that prices are sky high. Imagine just a few meters from Gran Via, a penthouse of 139 square meters. A penthouse with stunning views of Madrid for 850 euros a month. Well, that's where Begoña Gomez's family has lived for the past 10 years. Sabiniano, her father, who passed away a year ago, her uncle, who still lives in that area. And the most serious part, which was published by The Objective, and now a guest will tell us more about it. The sauna, the largest in Europe, the Adan sauna, owned by Begoña Gomez's father on San Bernardo Street in Madrid, was also a Mufasi property. In other words, the public buildings of the Civil Servants Mutual Society are being used as brothels. Can someone explain this to me? Guillermo Rocafort, how is our doctor in economics? How are you, my friend?
Very well. It's a pleasure, dear Albert, to be with you once again, commenting on these unfortunate but necessary news stories.
It's surreal. What I've just said is surreal. What is a building belonging to a civil servants mutual society doing being turned into a sauna and brothel, curiously owned by the father-in-law of the Prime Minister?
I'm afraid this isn't the only case. It's not an isolated incident. There must be many more. And also, on the other hand, we have to analyze this story in light of the serious crisis that Mufasa is going through. Because, as we all know, there are a lot of tensions regarding the renewal of those healthcare agreements with private companies. And of course, how could it be any different if Mufasa is refusing to charge market prices and is charging old rent-controlled rates? And nothing is being done. Not even an audit has been announced to find out how many apartments, brothels, or gay saunas belong to the family of Begoña Gomez, which should right now be a matter of debate and public opinion and should be addressed in Parliament. Not sure why the opposition isn't acting on this.
But is this legal? I mean, is it legal for a mutual society to have apartments under old rent contracts? Maybe I can understand giving those old rent contracts to very elderly civil servants, but not to set up businesses like this or any other, right?
Well, I think we're clearly dealing with something that falls under the criminal code here. The thing is, I don't know what the prosecutor's office is waiting for, because honestly, it seems to me like this is a misappropriation of public funds. Because Mufasa is a mutual association owned by civil servants, I don't know why the state attorney's office is waiting. Actually, I do. They're defending the attorney general. What they should be defending is the property of Mufasa, because Mufasa, after all, is made up of millions of Spanish civil servants who have dedicated their professional lives to public service, and they're being absolutely mistreated. And on the other hand, the role of the unions in staying silent about this issue is also disgraceful. We should check how many Mufasa properties are also used by the class-based Marxist unions.
It's no coincidence, I understand, that for the past 10 years, the family of Begoña Gomez, her uncle, her father, have lived and run their businesses in buildings with such low rent. Also, these are buildings in central locations. I've been told that behind this story, there should be an investigation into a police officer named Enrique Garcia, a close friend of Sabiniano, We're talking about an agent from Villarejo's circle, from Commissioner Villarejo, who were very close friends of Begoña Gomez's family of Sabiniano. And there is a connection, I'm sorry to say it, but there is, or there was in the past, between national police officers and brothels in this country. Is that where the scam, the deception could be coming from?
Well, possibly corruption in the police, even though it's a topic we don't like, especially for those of us who value order. But the police are riddled with corruption. But since time immemorial, since the transition itself, here what we have is a deep state that has been branching out, and the actual state has been unable to put a stop to it, to set limits on it. And in the end, we come across this news that truly astonishes us, that truly outrages us, seeing how the effort of millions of Spaniards, in this case public servants, there has been an entire network of corrupt police officers who have in some way created a web of connections with prostitution, vice, gambling, and organized crime. It's the Spanish deep state that must be dismantled as soon as possible.
Yes, but they always have advantages. They always get paid. Of course, in that little apartment above the Adams sauna, it seems that Begoña Gomez's uncle still lives there, paying a low rent. The attic is being rented online by the room. Man, an attic of almost 140 square meters for 800 euros. That's what you'd charge for a 4 square meter room. I mean, it's a sweet deal. And tell me something else. I read that you've investigated the placement of sex shops owned by Begoña Gomez's family in very strategic locations. Tell me about it.
Well, that's right. The truth is that with the corruption of the PSOE, we're always just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we really can't fully measure the extent of the corruption, but the extent of the corruption is infinite. And indeed, as a result of this company, which is the company of the family of Pedro Sanchez, his in-laws and his family, he has married the man who owns the gay sauna brothels. It has to be said. And he has benefited from that income, from those practices, because they have affected him very closely. They've affected him through his family. Well, indeed, through the municipalities of the PSOE. Well, this company, the one owned by Begoña Gomez's father, which is also called San Bernardo 36 Limited Company, well, it developed an entire network of sex shops in municipalities linked to or run by the PSOE. Specifically, there's the case of Torrejón de Ardoz, where, well, this comes out. It's not something we made up. It's actually published in the official bulletin of the Community of Madrid, where the mayor herself, before granting the sex shop license, she opens a public comment period in case anyone wants to object. Well, I imagine someone would object because having a sex shop at your doorstep, even if it's managed by, let's say, the in-law side of the family, could be quite unpleasant. But what does this mean? What we have to consider is that the Socialist Party is the party of brothels and saunas. It has been creating a network of vice, of sin, as some might consider it, right? In such a way that it has been spreading all this sexual garbage, this issue of sexual exploitation, because I have also found several cases where labor inspections have been opened against this company belonging to Pedro Sanchez's in-laws, precisely because of that labor and sexual exploitation, right? So what do we find? Well, the PSOE is the criminal network in Spain, but it has been like that for more than a century. So that's the reality. We're seeing it right now, indeed, with Mufasi's luxury apartments, which is truly shameful. With this housing problem, especially for young people, these excessive prices, these skyrocketing rents, and how do they keep enjoying precisely the old rent system from the Franco era, which they criticize so much and are now going to stigmatize when they are the ones actually benefiting from it? But we have to keep investigating, my dear friend, the PSOE sex shop network through, let's say, the father of Begoña Gomez, because it's really very significant. What does this show us? That they're not just brothels, not just gay saunas, but there are also sex shops, just like there are also abortion clinics. In other words, all the worst things in Spain revolve around the PSOE and Pedro Sanchez himself. Many Spaniards need to realize that crime and wrongdoing are currently in the PSOE, and that's the worst part.
But they're still there. They're still there, gentlemen. There are countless sex shops, for example, in the Community of Madrid, in municipalities that were governed at that time by the PSOE, who gave them the license, and behind it is the family of the president's wife. I insist someone has to investigate how it's possible that Mufatse has these privileged conditions with Begoña Gomez, her father, her uncle, and their businesses for more than 10 years. Someone needs to do it. Guillermo Rocaforo, take care. All the best. Have a great day.
Thanks, Albert. Happy Tuesday to you and your listeners.
Thank you very much. Thank you, friends, for your trust. You are showing it every day. Like Gile, he has breakfast every morning with our mug that we sent him. Thank you very much. You already know, in exchange for a donation, albertcastillon7@gmail.com, the show's email address, and we'll send it to you. There are 1,000 stories to tell you, but it's all worth it when you receive a message like the one from Diego.
Flag held high, the army in front and us behind, and people terrified in Valencia. Alvaro, a big greeting from Vigo. Keep pushing forward with the show. Your work is spectacular. Everyone to the trenches led by Alvaro.
Thank you very much, my friend. And thanks to Maria del Carmen Castillo for her donation. To Otilia Ortiz, who uses the word I like the most, freedom. Thank you to Marcos GM. You are very kind, Marcos. And Manuel Martin. Thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you to Gonzalo for his wonderful donation. Gonzalo Aranda, or to Mario Tarazona. Thank you very much, Mario. Every euro you give will be well used to keep this team running smoothly so that nothing fails and so that we can all move forward together. Look, Los Meconios are absolutely brilliant. You already know this unapologetic comedy group. They made a video about last weekend, about March 8th, which you've been sending me from all over. It reminds me of my childhood because it's the voice of Felix Rodriguez de la Fuente.
Where these irate beings gathered in large herds display themselves through unusual dances and calls.
The feminists come out in the demonstrations.
Alone and drunk, I want to get home, or a dead sexist pig compost for my garden. This species of bipedal mammal, generally of unpleasant appearance, is essentially a human female, but has developed a sick hatred towards the opposite sex. In fact, it is believed that it is precisely that irrational hatred towards the male that somehow limits her.
All the most famous feminists appear.
To negatively affect her physical appearance.
Yolanda Diaz among them.
As with other species, there are different variants of the Charus moradis, such as, for example, the Charus peludis, the Valenatus horribilis, or the Charus illustratis. This last one, without a doubt, is the most dangerous of all, because despite its limited reasoning and lack of sanity, the Charus illustratis is capable of negatively influencing the behavior of other species. One of the most surprising aspects of the Charus moradis is its tremendous ease in engaging in contradictory behaviors. For example, it's not uncommon to see them get furious when a bold male gives them a simple kiss. But then, however, they remain silent when other Charus fill the ecosystem with the most dangerous predators. That's Charus moradis for you, a complex being that hates everything masculine. But what she probably really needs is the pleasure of a good cucumber.
Please, you guys are amazing. Meconio, you guys are amazing. Congratulations, guys, and thank you for sending me these things. We get them all at 649-53-2000-435. Thank you, friends. Tomorrow, I'll be waiting for you with more confidential information and a dose of freedom, which does us a lot of good. See you tomorrow. Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.